Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Isaiah, the 3rd chapter. And as we see in this chapter here, Isaiah begins to continue with the message of the Lord, but now is more so on the judgment that's going to come, calling out the faults and the wickedness, right, that was going on from the women, right, in their arrogance and pride, to the rulers of the people, in their greediness and oppressive ways, all right, unto the consequences that would come upon them for that. So this is Isaiah chapter 3, verse 1. For behold, the Lord of hosts, Yahweh, doth take away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stay and the staff. And what the stay and the staff represents is, like supply, right? Their supply, their support, the things that they depend on for their day-to-day, okay? It says here, the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water. So they're basically the food supply, water supply, that's going to be taken away, right? The mighty man and the men of war, which will represent the city's defenses or their military, the judge and the prophet and the prudent and the ancient, right? And they would represent those that would instruct the nation and the people in the right ways. The prophet, obviously, keeping them in line with the ways of the Lord, right? The judge, the prudent. I believe when you actually go into the prudent, though, it goes into, what is it? Yeah, Kosam, a diviner, right? To practice divination, it says, of false prophets. But in any case, these were people or different positions that would provide some form of guidance or information or insight to the people. So basically, Isaiah is listing here, right, the things that Israel depended upon, right, known as the stay or the staff, for support or to sustain them, the Lord would take away, all right, from the food to the water to the military to the rulers and judges, right, the captain of 50 and the honorable man, right, so the officers, high-ranking officials, and the counselor and the cunning artificer and the eloquent orator, right? So once again, the counselor to provide, like, judge in certain matters, provide insights on certain things. The artificer were those that were the smiths. So they would be builders. When I say builders, I mean in the sense of like creating these, the things that would be needed, whether it's tools or weapons. To actually go into that word artificer. Oh, interesting. Actually, it says here, silently secret magic art magician. All right, so that's actually interesting here. Let's actually look at the lexicon. So we can't make this bigger, but in here, which is also beneficial, is you get to see what are the different meanings of the word. And in more particular, when you see a bunch of different, the outline of biblical usage over here, the lexicon sometimes helps you pinpoint which meaning is attributed to what verse. So here you can see, okay, so it's actually here more in the sense, less of like a builder, but more so of somebody practicing magical arts. Right, so as you can see here, it says an artifice used in a bad sense of magic arts. Compare Chaldee, a magician, and enchanter, Isaiah 3:3. One skilled in artifices, i.e. in magic, there follows a skillful enchanter. Yep. And then you have here, understand a skillful workman. So rather than the workman, this would be in the sense of a magician. So going back to Isaiah 3:3, right? The cunning artificer would be rather those magicians, right? In the forms of, you had some that would soothsay, right? So fortune telling, and use basically left-handed practices for many means. And then it goes into, as it mentions, the eloquent orator, which I believe is also somewhere along those lines. So not orator as you would think today, right? Because if I was to look up here, orator definition, it says here a public speaker, especially one who is eloquent or skilled. But when you go into the Hebrew, the orator here is, as it says, whispering, charming, serpent charming, charms, amulet, whisper of prayer. So basically a charmer, right? As you can see, in a good sense, a private prayer; in a bad sense, an incantation. Okay, so seeing like the preceding terms here were in relation to magic, right? And those arts, you can deduce that this orator here is not in a good sense, right? But the point that Isaiah is saying here is that the Lord is going to take all that away when he brings that destruction. Verse 4, and I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. Now, it doesn't mean that the Lord is going to take, a swaddling baby and say, okay, this is your ruler. But what it means is that the characteristics of a child, right? A childish mindset, a childish behavior, is what their rulers, for the most part, would that's the kind of mindset they would come with, right? Basically giving into their impulses rather than ruling with wisdom, right? And the scriptures tell us in the Apocrypha, right? It says a wise, see if I can find that, judge. Ecclesiasticus chapter 10, verse 1. A wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered. Okay? As the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. An unwise king destroyeth his people, but through the prudence of them which are in authority, the city shall be inhabited. So on that point, when the Lord said here, right, via Isaiah, that he would give them children to be their princes, right, their nobility and their rulers and chiefs, right, and babes shall rule over them. It's along those lines, which is to say, like how an unwise king destroys his people, their rulers wouldn't be those that were prudent to lead them in the right way. And that would in turn lead to ruin, right? Decay, chaos, and turmoil within within Israel. And the people shall be oppressed, every one by another. So as you can see now, it's leading into the Lord first takes away your resources, he takes away your dependables, and then chaos starts to ensue, right? People start oppressing one another. As it says here, everyone by another, everyone by his neighbor. So from the oppression from the kings and the nobility to even between neighbors, you may have one that's richer or well off versus one that's maybe not so well off, and the one who is in a better position is then using his riches and whatnot to deal oppressively with the other because he knows he has the means to. And everyone by his neighbor, the child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient. And the custom of like respect was very heavy in Israel, right? The children knew their place, right? And the law even tells you if you have a disobedient child and the parents can't get through to them, they would bring the child to the elders and stone the child. So here, this is like the opposite here. The child behaving themselves proudly against the ancient being the elders or those that are older. And you always hear that saying, respect your elders, which even till today, you see effect happening amongst our people. There is no such thing as respect for your elders. I recall years ago there was a video of a dude stomping out an old woman on the I think it was on the 4 train, right? Like with his boots, had blood coming from her nose and everything. It's literally the opposite of respecting your elders, and that's what you see today, and that's what you were seeing back then, as the Lord said He would bring. And what all this leads to is a destructive environment leading to a destroyed people, and the base against the honorable. So the base being those that are in a lower position, behaving themselves proudly against the honorable, not showing respect, treating them as though, it's whatever, right? So in essence, a lack of order. Verse 6, when a man shall take hold of his brother of the house of his father, saying, Thou hast clothing, be thou our ruler, and let this ruin be under thy hand. Which is to say, things are going to get so bad that as all this chaos, that's what is meant by ruin, is taking place, people are going to seek for somebody to be able to bring order, right? So the example being given here is one seeking somebody of his household who looks like they're doing better, right? They're better off than the rest of the people, and trying to get them to bring order, right? To take that responsibility of providing for the people and instilling order again. That's why it says, Be thou our ruler, and let this ruin be under thy hand. So you basically take charge. Verse 7, in that day shall he swear, saying, I will not be an healer, for in my house is neither bread nor clothing. Basically, they're gonna turn it down because everybody's gonna be trying to fend for themselves, right? Saying that, look, I don't even have enough in my own house to take care of me and my family. Make me not a ruler of the people. So I don't want to take that burden. I don't want to take that responsibility of trying to bring order to this messed up, chaotic society. And once again, the example that or the image that Isaiah is painting here is Israel's disobedience leading to the Lord taking away the things that kept society stable and kept society running. And now everybody's doing whatever they want. Society is messed up. The rulers are not wise. They're not bringing order. And it's just this chaos, impulsive, and decayed society. Ruins. Verse 7, in that day, verse 8, for Jerusalem is ruined, and Judah is fallen, because their tongue and their doings are against the Lord Yahweh. So for the things that they spoke against the Lord, right, in their arrogance and their actions, which definitely angered the Lord, as we've mentioned here, I believe it's in Isaiah the 2nd chapter or the 1st, it mentioned about how the mean man from the mean man to him that is of high stature, we're all bowing down to idols. And these are actions that were against the Lord. So because of that, as it says, Jerusalem is ruined, Judah is fallen, to provoke the eyes of his glory. So their actions and their words were against the Lord to the point of provoking him, to anger him. The shew of their countenance doth witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. And when you read this, I like the way it's worded in the NLT, right? The very look on their faces gives them away. And you can even see that today, right? You look at our people today, and you can see a wicked individual from a mile away, just looking at his face. Like damn, this guy he just looks like a demon. When you read those articles or you see those news clips of somebody who committed some crazy, atrocious crime, and then you look at their face, he looks like the crime, right? So as it says, their countenance, their face bears witness, right? Witnesses against them that y'all are guilty. And they declare their sin as Sodom, they hide it not. As it reads, they display their sin like the people of Sodom and don't even try to hide it. So they're wicked and proud about it. And this is something that they've been doing since back then. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves. So by these actions, they have basically warranted judgment that would come upon them. Say ye to the righteous that it shall be well with him, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. So those that were still following the ways of the Lord, they're going to be rewarded accordingly. However, woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him. Meaning it's not going to go well with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. So if you reap wickedness, you're going to sow destruction. Or Slaki, if you sow wickedness, you're going to reap destruction. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. So going back to what we read up above, right? Children going into that these rulers with a childish, impulsive, base mindset that are not fit to properly lead the people. And they are the ones in high positions, in whether it's kings or nobilities or the princes, and they oppress the people out of their greed, right, and their desires. And women rule over them, right, which goes into at least back then, you had certain women that gained the influence, right? They had so much influence over their husbands, which were in high positions, that technically they would be able to call the shots from behind the scenes, right? One example was like Jezebel, where she was just brazen, even though she wasn't an Israelite. That was one example, right? The things that she did wasn't just isolated to just her, okay? And fast forward till today, well, they don't even need, they use the same tactics, but they don't even need a king or this. They just blatantly have now, because society has been over-sexualized and men have become peasants and puppets to women just because of how they look. Now women basically are in a position of what it would seem like rulers, right? Influencers. And what does that lead to? Continuing in the verse, O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy path. So the people that they looked to for guidance and leadership lead them in the wrong way, into error. It influenced you to go against the Lord and destroy the way of thy path. So the right ways that you should go down are basically destroyed, and they introduce to you a new way, which is that of wickedness. At least the end road of that is judgment. Verse 13, the Lord standeth up to plead and standeth to judge the people. The word plead here doesn't mean to like beg, but it means to strive or to contend against. So now you can imagine as though there's a court case or hearing, and the Lord is bringing his case against Israel. The Lord will enter into judgment with the ancients of his people, and these are the elders, the ones who are in positions of authority, and the princes thereof, also positions of authority. For ye have eaten up the vineyard, the spoil of the poor is in your houses. And we know Israel is also likened unto the Lord's vineyard. So these elders, these ancients and princes, were those that were supposed to guard and watch over the vineyard, but rather they are themselves, they are playing the role of the people that they were supposed to be guarding against, all right, and consuming the vineyard, which in this case would be taking advantage of the people. As it says, the spoil of the poor is in your houses. So how did they get those spoils? Through oppression, as we read up above. What mean ye that ye beat my people to pieces and grind the faces of the poor, saith the Lord of hosts? So now here there's like this metaphorical or sense of like an analogy here, right? This is the process of when you harvest, you get the grain, you beat it, as in you thresh it, and then you grind it with like a millstone. You grind it between a millstone to then transform it into flour, right? You use it to your advantage. So here the Lord is saying here, like, you are basically eating of the people, right? Consuming them, taking advantage of them, likened onto beating them, right? Not literally, but if they were like grain, you are beating them and grinding them, basically squeezing out every last bit of what they have, i.e. the poor, to your benefit. So when he says, what mean ye that ye beat my people to pieces. Imagine if somebody is coming to you, telling you something. For example, you're a father, and then they're coming to you, maybe, I don't know, a teacher, and says that, oh, there's this other kid that was bullying your son, and then their family came there, and then they all started beating up your son, or your daughter. And as they're saying that, you're like, yo, the F you mean, they came to the school and did what? Like, who the hell gave you the authority or the right, speaking about them, to think that that was okay to do? So it's like that saying today, like what you mean you did X, Y, and Z? And that's sort of the energy that the Lord is portraying here. As like, by what pretense or what means did you think that it was okay for you to, i.e., do this, right? Verse 15. Verse 16, moreover, the Lord Yahweh saith, because now, right, we dealt with the wickedness, how the Lord is going to take away the resources and bring this chaos and the corrupt rulership by the oppressors, the chiefs, the elders, the princes. And now the Isaiah calls out here the women, right? Because they weren't exempt either. So verse 16, moreover, the Lord Yahweh saith, because the daughters of Zion are haughty. When you go into the word haughty, it is arrogant, proud. And needless to say, you can identify who the daughters of Zion would be today. Okay. It says, and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes. Now, when you look into the word wanton, one of the words there is oogling, right? Or to oogle. So I typed it in here, oogling, and it says here, oogle is stare at in a lecherous manner. The word lecherous says having or showing excessive or offensive sexual desire. If you, I mean, I doubt I need to even give examples of this. Okay, I'm sure we've all seen a woman who either looks at you or looks at somebody like that, and in most cases, it's likely not a single woman who is a God-fearing woman. It's probably some adulterous woman or some woman who is desiring you, right? Not all the time, but you get the point here, right? So they walk with those desirous, lustful eyes, arrogantly and proudly, walking and mincing as they go, and making a twinkling or tinkling with their feet. And when you look into that word mincing, right, it goes into, like I'd say, like a close example would be the modern day catwalk, right? If you ever look at those like beauty pageants or those little, catwalk shows, that walk, the way they walk that way is, let me see if I can find the, I pulled up a video here. I just typed in here catwalk style. So these are like some shorts, some YouTube shorts that will show you that sort of look, right? That walk, which is to basically attract attention, right? Is to portray yourself in like this desirable means, to either seduce or get eyes on you. All right, so I also looked it up here, like the comparison between like the modern day catwalk and mincing, and it says here, which this is on my phone, is this the catwalk style could be considered a modern example of mincing, especially if the walk is done with pride or for seductive display. All right, so that's what you see basically when you look at those shows, right? If you look at the catwalk, the modern day catwalk in those fashion shows, those models, as it says, often walk in stylized, attention-grabbing manner designed to highlight themselves and the clothing. This walk can be dramatic, seductive, or haughty, paralleling the description in Isaiah. So I'm not going to click on these to play them, but I will hover so you can see sort of how they are, right? So this is just one that I found here, but hopefully it plays. I didn't play the whole thing. See if I can mute it. Okay, cool. It's muted. So you'll see how they'll do that like one step, one foot in front of the other. The necks, you can see the necks. Yeah. Look at the necks, right? The stretch forth necks, the head tilt, the that arrogant, proud look. That's basically that attention grabbing walk, right? The hip, you can see that, right? The hip movements, the emphasis on that. Right, here's another one. So when they're on stage and they're doing this, it's that's the whole point. It's to grab eyes. It's to be like, damn, yo, she's really like, and this to promote, in this case, like marketing, clothing, whatever the case is. But obviously back then, that mincing, that stretch forth neck, those wanton eyes, that haughty attitude was that proud energy, right? And the tinkling with their feet was the anklets and ornaments that they would have on. Okay, and so they would basically use that as they moved, to sort of attract attention, rather than being more shamefaced and humble and following the ways of the Lord. And the problem here was they were doing this in wickedness, right? This would be, for example, people that are whether it's like a wife of a rich man, and she's in on his oppressive ways against the people, and she's living good off of that. So she has the means to go out dressed like this. She has a reason in her mind to be haughty and arrogant. She can look at anybody how she wants and desire anybody she wants, because in her mind, who's going to do anything to her or about it? So as a result, all right, as it says, verse 17, therefore the Lord will smite with the scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will discover their secret parts. So now, the as a result, that long set of hair, believe it or not, at one point, the Judite women, the Southern Kingdom, right, so-called black women today, they didn't have to wear weaves and sew-ins and all of those. They had naturally long, beautiful hair. And when you look into the word scab in the lexicon here, I think it should be down here. Yep. So the one related to Isaiah 3:17, as we're reading here, it says to make fall off used of the hair by disease or scab, hence to make bald. So it's not necessarily that, the women just randomly started going bald, but over time, that ability to grow that long, nice, beautiful hair, at a quick rate, the Lord took that away. So that's why a lot of them struggle even till this day to like grow like a nice full hair. It's either like damaged, or they always gotta do this to it or do that to it. And that's why the whole wig making or weave making industry, they make a lot of money. And if you look at their number one customers, it's not even Northern Kingdom women, right? It's mainly so-called black women, right? And that goes back to this curse, basically, or judgment the Lord put on them for their wickedness. Verse 18, in that day, the Lord will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments about their feet, bravery going into the beauty, okay? And their calls and their round tires like the moon. So the calls, the round tires, these are like the jewelry, right? The necklaces, the anklets, the wrist bracelets, and all of that. The chains and the bracelets and the mufflers. I believe the mufflers goes into like the veil, the head coverings, the bonnets, right? Also head coverings, and the ornaments of the legs, and the headbands, and the tablets, and the earrings, the rings, the nose jewels, the changeable suits of apparel, right? So all their different fancy outfits and all of that, the Lord is going to take all that away. And the mantles and the wimples and the crisping pins, right? When you look into all these, I'll pull them up real quick. Right, we have here the mantles, which here is like the over tunic, right? Once again, it's part of their attire. The wimples, a cloak, once again, part of their attire, and crisping pins. So we got here, right, a bag or a purse, right? So all of this luxurious lifestyle, right, that they had, these teats, the Lord said he was going to take all that away. The glasses, right, which goes into like because back then they had mirrors as well. Like they, it's not like they couldn't see themselves. When you go into the word glasses, I believe it goes into like that. Yeah, right. Tablet, mirror, flat, shiny ornament. And these are all the things that they cared about, right? Because it's all about how they look. So the Lord said he would take all that away, right? The fine linen and the hoods and the veils, all of those he would take away. And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell, there shall be stink. So all the fragrances, the oils, the beautiful, desirable things, both outwardly in terms of their looks And, you know, in terms of their smell, the Lord will replace that, take that away. And now there would be stink. Okay. Which once again is happening all the way till today. Talking about sit down winds and shit. If you know, you know. You probably wish you didn't. And instead of a girdle, a rent. So the girdle being like the satchel, right? That they would wear around the midsection. A rent. Okay, a rent here, it goes into like a rope, right? So now it's like the downgrade, right? Instead of having all those beautiful clothing, the girdle, the satchel, all that, now you're gonna be like almost in captivity, right? As it says, a rope. And usually it was when you wore your garment, it would be like you know, like children, like a little girl's nightgown, you know, that's like all like a robe that just hangs down. So the rope or the satchel would be to basically tied at the waist, so it's not just flowing everywhere. And instead of well set hair, baldness. And instead of a stomacher, a girdle of sackcloth, right? So, and a stomacher was like also a fancy piece of clothing, but rather than that, they would be wearing sackcloth. And burning instead of beauty. Okay, so instead of that, also when you go into the word burning, it's translated as the meaning to be branding, which once again lines up with like the concept here of being captive. That's why they would have sackcloth and wear a rent, right? And as it says here, instead of sweet smell, stink. Verse 25, thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty men in the war. And her gates shall lament and mourn, and she shall be desolate, or she being desolate shall sit upon the ground. And that's ultimately, right, this manifested, you know, different points, but mainly if we're going from the time of Isaiah, it heavily manifested at the time of when the Babylonians came and took Judah, right, which consisted of the southern kingdom, captive into Babylon. Okay, so pretty much, right, this is the judgment, right, the calling out of the wickedness going on in Israel and the judgment that would befall it. And we can see here some of those curses that the Lord, you know, the Lord said he was going to bring upon Israel. We see follow them and pertain even all the way until now. Okay, so with that, that brings us to the end of the book of Isaiah, the 3rd chapter. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kudash. Until next time, Shalom.